Gentle planet. We are visiting a small coastal town on a world where gravity moves in slow waves, rising and falling with a rhythm everyone can read. Streets, fields, and harbours adjust to the gentle drift, and life unfolds at the pace of those quiet swells. The town square is paved with wide, smooth stones that show shallow grooves from years of careful footfall and rolling carts. Short iron posts ring the square with braided cords looped through them, ready to steady anything that might lift. A clock on the bell tower doesn't mark hours alone here. Its face also carries a thin blue hand that points to lift or settle. When the hand edges toward lift, shopkeepers latch cabinet doors and tie light things down with practiced knots. In the center stands a round fountain, water rising from 3 low spouts, the streams curving a little more whenever the pull of the ground relaxes. Flags above the old city hall hang heavy in settle, and then rise as if encouraged, though no wind moves them. Pigeons pace the warm stones, pecking at seeds, then look surprised when their steps gain a soft bounce. Benches are slung with neat sandbags under their seats. Not ugly, more like useful ornaments that belong exactly where they are. The bell rings a single clear note, and people look up, not alarmed, just confirming what they already feel in their shoulders and knees. You can sense it too, a small change inside your step, like loose dust underfoot has turned to something springier. During lift, small things announce the change before big things do. Bits of grit on windowsills loosen and travel an inch, then pause as if reconsidering the journey. Leaves that collected in the gutters along the bakery roof shift and slide into the air, not flying away, just hovering like coins on the moment before a flip. A pair of earrings in a jeweller's window swing forward and hold there, shining steady, and the cord of the shop bell draws straighter against its loop. Carts built for this town have ratchets on their wheels, so they can't roll when people aren't looking. And you can hear soft clicks as the ratchets settle into their teeth. An older woman with a basket pauses and closes the brass fastener on her hat brim so it won't lift and tap her nose. A black cat, lounging on a barrel, narrows its eyes and stretches longer than gravity usually permits. Front paws making slow, exaggerated kneads against the wood. A young delivery boy grips a crate, not to keep it from falling, but to keep it from walking itself out of his hands. The air grows quieter when the pull eases, because footsteps don't strike the ground in the same way. The clock's blue hand moves a thin width further, and everyone breathes a little easier into the lightness. Down at the harbour, the change is measured by ropes and water lines. Boats are moored to low bollards and to tall posts that run through rings. The rings dull with use, so they slide without sticking. Painted marks on the posts show yesterday's lift range, and the colours help people read today's plan at a glance. The water surface looks level, but floats strapped along the pier edge rise a finger's width above their usual line and stay there before sinking back. Fishermen check their nets, which are kept in weighted crates that sit gently on the planks instead of biting into them. A small ferry wears heavy shoes of lead along its hull. The captain calls them his harbour boots, and he pats them like their loyal dogs before each run. Children stand at the rail and release paper rings into the air, guessing how long the rings will hover before touching water. An old bell attached to a buoy rolls itself very slightly toward the pier and taps the clapper, producing a polite note that nobody minds hearing. Gulls don't bother to flap much during lift. They ride the air and watch for the wake of the ferry, unhurried, watchful, sure of the next slow pull. The baker Miko times his oven work by lift and settle rather than minutes. He has shelves that hinge upward on light days, so racks of cooling loaves float just enough to keep their crusts from flattening. Flour puffed from the sifter hangs in a sheet between his hands and the mixing bowl, and takes a good breath to come down, which gives him time to wipe the counter with the back of his wrist. Egg yolks round up higher in their bowls and threaten to escape, so he sets a short brass ring over each bowl like a collar to keep them honest. Dough is easier to shape when the pull is soft. It rises tall and doesn't collapse when he moves it from bench to peel. A sign on his counter reads, "Please place coins in the dish." And the dish is magnetized at its base, so payment doesn't drift onto the floor. He ties a cotton loop to each bag of rolls and clips it to a line above the counter, so customers can pluck their order without the bag wandering. When Settle returns, the line of loops slackens, and Miko nods without looking, as if he can feel the slack from across the room. You leave with a paper bag that pushes upward into your palm, as if proud of its contents. The town park is planted with soft grass that grows in mounded clumps, the kind that keeps a hold even when things lighten. Tall reeds in the shallow stream bend and then straighten with the cycles. And if you watch, their tips draw a neat pattern in the air. A narrow oval, repeated again and again. Dandelion seeds drift at ankle height for minutes at a time, spinning slowly but never leaving, as if each seed knows it has farther to go and is saving its energy. A gardener in blue overalls reinforces the cords around young trees, testing the knots with a gentle tug, then tapping each stake with his foot to seat it deeper for the next settle. A stone path across the stream sits on wide, flat rocks, with small holes drilled through their sides for the water to sigh out as lift changes their weight in place. A terrier watches eddies form under the stones, and then jumps, satisfied when gravity helps him almost clear the last step without effort. Ducks paddle without any plan, feet swinging slower, beaks turning toward things that drift to them instead of away. At the park edge, a low fence carries soft pads along the top rail, useful both as a seat and as a bumper during lift, when elbows and shoulders want a higher line than usual. Near the gate, a sign shows the day's predicted swell times. But most people glance at it just to confirm what their hips and ankles already told them. Market Street runs in a shallow curve, and every stall is built to adjust. The canopies hang from crossing poles that can be raised or lowered with pulleys. And the pulleys have bright wooden handles that make them easy to grip, even for small hands. Baskets of fruit sit in nested frames with leather straps so they don't climb over their neighbors when the lift peaks. A spice seller named Hannah shows measurements by settled volume, not weight, holding up a scoop and tapping the rim twice to settle the grains, so buyers can see exactly what they are getting. Loose cloth rolls are kept in slotted racks, and the sides of the racks are lined with felt, so you don't hear wood scrape against wood as the rolls ease upward. A stall that sells kitchen tools has every ladle and spoon tethered in tidy rows from a crossbar. Each utensil carries a short strap with a snap that clicks softly when the owner runs a hand down the line. Vendors use colored ribbons to mark the current crest. Green for shallow lift, yellow for mid, red for the day's top. And the street shows a calm rainbow as people adjust their setups. A man selling seed packets displays them on a magnetic board so they sit neat and flat, no matter the cycle. Paper becomes a little untrustworthy during lift, so he pushes a smooth stone against the top corner of the notice that reads, "Plant by Cresting Moon." You buy a sprig of herbs, and the seller folds it into waxed paper that doesn't try to unfurl while you walk. The school sits on a slope, so students learn the feel of both directions in one yard. A tall pendulum hangs in the covered walkway, the bob gliding in a slow figure 8 that tells older kids more than a chart would. In class, they draw the day's wave on the board next to the multiplication table, and their lines are straight and clean from practice. Teachers keep boxes of chalk with elastic straps across the lids, so chalk doesn't leave the box on its own during lessons. Outside, kites are part of physical education, not for running, but for holding steady at fixed line lengths and reading how the pull changes along the thread. One child collects pencil shavings during lift because the curls need less sweeping when they hover, and he tips them from his palm into a jar without a single one escaping. Another student rests a marble on a marked ledge and times how long it takes to drift from one small nail to another, recording the numbers in a slim notebook. When the bell rings, it gives two tones, one high when lift holds, and one low when settle returns. So everyone hears the change without looking. The yard goes quiet for a moment as the shift passes through, and then the usual talk resumes. If you follow the path out of town, the hills show the rhythm as plainly as the sea. The scrub grows low here, small bushes with tight leaves and wiry branches that grab at the soil and don't let go. Fence posts along the road have wide feet instead of tick marks, and the rails between them are tied with a net of twine that can slack or tighten without breaking. Goats wear belts that accept little weights clipped on with rings, and the goat keeper moves down the line, adding or removing a ring with a pat on each back. At crest, he walks with a lazy stride and never slips on the gravelly slope, because the ground barely insists on his boots. Clouds look close even on a normal day, but during lift they hang lower, not moving fast, just nearer and smoother to the eyes. High thistles release fluff that rises shoulder high and then slides sideways along the hillside. And in settle, the fluff comes down and brushes against your trousers before setting gently on the path. From the ridge, you can watch the grain fields flex like fur. Each swell passes through, and you see the heads rise, tilt, and ease back down in a band that travels across the valley. The sound is not a roar or a hush here, just a shift in the way stems touch each other. On a side street, a glassmaker's studio stays flanked by heavy stone, but its work hangs in air. Sheets of cooling glass are supported in frames from the ceiling with narrow cables that accept the cycle without stress. When lift holds, the glassmaker blows larger spheres than usual, her cheeks moving slowly, as if matching the pace of the world outside. The gathered glass at the end of the blowpipe stretches with a grace she relies on, and she turns the pipe so the sphere doesn't pull off center. An assistant in thick gloves guides a ring underneath, not to hold the weight, but to give the form a place to stop if it drifts too far. Once, a perfect bubble slips its punty and floats above the table for a long, careful minute before settling into the cradle prepared for it. The kiln door opens with a low woof, and in lift, the heat plume climbs straight up and hangs there. A column you can see, like clear water pushed by nothing. Finished pieces, thin bowls, tall vases, globes for lamps, are tethered by braid until the glassmaker signs each with a pen that leaves a shallow frost mark. She keeps a jar of tiny glass birds near the register, and they barely touch the felt pad beneath them, wings raised exactly to the angle the day allows. Night comes slowly here, because the evening settle leans against it. Lanterns along the market lane rise, as if they intend to fly, but never do, their lines already tied at their far knots. The lantern keeper walks with a pole, pulling each flame into place, and tugging once to confirm the knot's grip. Musicians choose pieces with long notes, and on lift, the notes sit in the air a fraction longer, hanging neat between one breath and the next. Steam from soup stalls forms tall, careful plumes that step upward and then stop, so you can see the shape of the spouts and curls as if sketched. A pair of friends eating noodles pause to laugh when their chopsticks feel almost springy in their hands, and they set their bowls on iron discs hidden beneath the tablecloth, so nothing takes a short trip toward the edge. Dogs nap with their paws turned upward, breathing slow. Tags turned on their collars so the metal doesn't tap the street. A banner over the lane shows coloured patches that match the day's ranges, and visitors learn fast. Red patch means watch your hat. Green patch means take longer steps. Blue circle means expect stillness. When the lantern keeper reaches the square again, he lowers a final lamp a hand's width and leaves it where the next settle will carry it back to its usual mark. At the station, the local tram uses the cycle as part of its power instead of fighting it. The tracks are embedded low and clean in the stone, with rubber pips between the rails, so shoes don't slide on lift. Schedules are printed with small icons: feather for lift assist, anchor for settle push, and the conductor calls out which section of track will be easiest in the next 10 minutes. Passengers entering the carriage reach for straps that hang in 2 rows, one short, one long, depending on the phase. When the tram eases up the mild ridge outside town, the conductor smiles and loosens the throttle because the hill is kinder during crest, and the cars glide like a skater rolling off a gentle ramp. Crossing the ridge, the cabin goes very quiet. Only the soft hiss of the motor and the faint sound of loose coins staying content in pockets. People who carry parcels keep a thumb against string to be friendly to the slowness and not tempt it. The brakes are gentler than in other places because drivers here trust distance and timing more than hard stops. At the last platform, a signboard shows tomorrow's predicted crest windows, drawn in soft blue and pale grey, and everyone reads them without rush. Inland, a wide lake lies between low hills, and the cycle rights itself on the water. Lily pads near the shore drift a little out from their stems during lift, and then settle again, the stems bowing, unbothered by the stretch. Dragonflies hold position with small moves of their clear wings, and each move costs them less when the pull softens. A researcher kneels on a landing and drops a marked pebble into a tube with clear sides, measuring drift against etched lines. Pencil moving in a notebook with a taut string tied to its spine. Frogs launch from pads with a hopeful push and seem startled in mid-air, legs extended, before their bellies touch the water with quiet smacks. Floating seed heads gather in long, slow trains that track the mild surface slope the wave makes, and minnows arrange beneath them as if the seeds offer shade. A tiny skiff tied to the landing rests half a thumb above the usual line, and the tie ropes cross in an X that holds slack for later. When Settle returns, ripples widen and reach the bank in smooth curves, and reeds brush each other with a sound like someone turning a page. The researcher caps her pencil, checks her lines again, and smiles toward the next crest. Uphill from town, the observatory keeps the best clock for many miles around. Its pendulum is longer than a person, a brass disc that swings through a measured arc with numbers set into the floor beneath it. During lift, the swing covers a hair more distance before the supports bring it back. But the correction is built into the mechanism, and students learn to read the difference on a brass ring stamped with ticks. Beside the pendulum, a tall glass tube holds a bead of wood lifted within it by the wave's faint change. And that bead's height appears on a simple white scale. A wide board chalked fresh every morning shows crest predictions out to the next market day, calculated from the longer cycles that stack under the daily ones. And travellers photograph the board instead of copying it by hand. In the quiet room next door, an old star chart lines the wall, not for navigation, but for comparison to the night sky without the tug's distraction. The observatory door is heavy, not to keep people out, but to keep it where the builders left it during lift. A small bell outside the entrance taps itself once whenever the crest reaches the hilltop, and the sound is used by shepherds to check their counts out on the upper fields. The attendant runs a careful finger under the bead on the scale, notes the reading, and turns the card on the door from measure to rest.